of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can you take the roll call, Madam Clerk?
I can.
Trustee Burt.
Present.
Trustee Favdon.
Present.
Treasurer Anderson. Present. Supervisor Miller.
Here.
Clerk Triplett here. Trustee Clee.
Here.
And Trustee Campbell. Absent. On her way.
We'll move to public comment. If you'd like to address the board, I'd ask that you come to the podium and give us your name, and you have 4 minutes to address the board. Oopsie.
Hello again, my name is Emily Reed. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the board. In light of the new information brought to my attention yesterday, I'd like to continue my story regarding the shutting down of our fireworks tent. After all that occurred, we shut down our location and put a sign up telling our customers where we could be found at our location outside of the township. The building department refused to drop the lawsuit that was filed until all signs were removed. How will our customers know where to find us now? After a blatant mistake of issuing permits last year and lack of communication on the part of the building department, you'd think that a sign could be ignored for 3 weeks in order to help mitigate the mistakes that were made. Even more concerning, now that the township has approved a third-party tent on Miller Road. This permit was accepted within 24 hours. This same tent was there last year. As of last board meeting, Ms. Karen Miller insisted that no third-party vendors would be allowed, period, per the township ordinance. However, this is exactly what is being allowed. Supposedly, this permit is being allowed because Party City sells fireworks. Party City does not and never has sold the products that this tent is selling. Party City sells sparklers and candles, which is a completely different classification of fireworks. It took me all but 5 minutes to walk into their tent, look at their insurance on the wall, and get a business card to see where they're from. The tent is headquartered in Farmington Hills and is brick and mortar building that sells fireworks. This business name is Exotic Fireworks. This township would rather allow a third-party vendor come in from outside this community instead of allow a business that is inside this community operate who employs people in this township. I have friends and family calling me, asking me why they can operate. They saw the tent going up, and why we cannot. That's a very good question. You have taken funds directly out of the pockets of your citizens that would have been employed at that tent. This is not about allowing or not allowing fireworks and the sale of fireworks from tents. That can be debated. This is about why things are being done the way that they are and how things are being handled. This is about restricting free enterprise by picking and choosing what to enforce and what not to enforce and who to enforce it for. These laws should all be applied fairly and evenly. This will result in the death of your township, not the name of the township. If small businesses or local citizens don't have the confidence to invest here, there is no hope for the future of this township. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to address the board?
My name is Christopher Reed. Spoke last week as well about the same issue here. You know, we are citizens that grew up in this township, that were raised by everybody here on this board, raised by the fire department, the police department. They were our school resource officers. I have the utmost respect for everybody here. We've tried to operate businesses here, multiple businesses. We tried to hire people from the township, people from the county. I just want to pose the question to the board, what is different? What has changed, and why is this being allowed? Clearly, it's showing to me that our care for this township, our care for the donations that we've done in this township, our care for the time and energy that we spent to help this township succeed is not wanted anymore. And I want to ask that question, why? I want the integrity and the character of the people here that raised me to ask the question, why? You look up the address of Exotic Fireworks, it comes out of Farmington Hills. It's on Telegraph Road. They have a brick and mortar building down there. Why are we allowing a third-party vendor operate a fireworks stand that is not even from our township, but yet denying 2 young local kids that grew up here, went to the schools here, were involved with your kids, your families, growing up? I rode dirt bike in the backyards of some of these families' homes. All right, what's different? It's time to make a change.
Is there anyone else who'd like to address the board?
I think you all know me. I'm Neil Seward. As most of you know, my wife Mary Beth and Trustee Vert maintain the flowers in front of the police station and the surrounding area out to and including the pavilion area. We're a little concerned with the construction going on, and I know in a lot of respects we try to culminate. We'd like to have that look good at all times, but we'd like to culminate it for your National Night Out event. So we're just wondering if there's any update, what we can do to make that area. I weeded it all yesterday, and the ground is so very, very hard and difficult, but we'd like to make that look a little nicer for your event. Also, Mary Beth has all these little plots. She intends on bringing cuttings of her own flowers and perennials and planting them there, but the weather has just not been conducive to that, so don't think we're dropping the ball on you. She had me trimming shrubs and doing some other things yesterday. And anyway, if you can just kind of give us an update on that or let us know, because we do want to make that look nice for you for that event. Another thing, I like to judge and get to know people on my own. When I hear something negative about a person, I generally, if I don't know that person, I take it with a grain of salt. And if you continue to hear negativity about a certain person or a certain area, then all of a sudden the light clicks on and makes you do some consideration. My concern is how many times I've heard, either at these meetings or from residents in our community, in walking through my neighborhood, how many times people have called the building department, left messages, and they always say, in a lot of respects, multiple messages, but no one ever gets back with them. In my career, with all the employees I had, all the areas of responsibility, I set a 36-hour rule. I don't care how busy I was, within 36 hours, I would make sure that I got back with that person. And if I couldn't do it, I made sure someone else did. I think a lot of the issues that we're finding here, such as these people in their fireworks stand, had they been communicated to earlier on, perhaps they would have had more time to revisit certain areas and make some alternate plans. And it just seemed like it was the last minute. And they did divulge when they spoke at the last meeting that they came with plenty of time in advance, but they did not hear back from anyone. So just a consideration. I'm not trying to be critical, but I think if someone does put out a question to you or leave a message, that we owe it to them to get back to them. And I can use all of you as an example. You know, anytime I text you, I call you, I email you, you've all, the people sitting up there in front of me right now, have been very responsive to not only me, but my wife and the rest of the citizens that we interact with. I appreciate your time, as always. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Neil.
Is there anyone else who'd like to address the board? No? We're gonna move on. I see reports were left off the agenda, so I'm gonna go to reports. I don't have a report this evening, do you?
I do not have a report this evening.
No.
Nope.
Madam Treasurer?
No.
Are there any trustee reports this evening?
I'm good.
Trustee Vert?
No, this is last minute. No, I got nothing.
Staff reports. We'll start with you, Lieutenant Baldwin. Anything?
I do not have a report.
Chief Beckley?
I'll just real quick touch on a structure fire that we had on Monday. Monday morning, your fire department responded to a structure fire in the River Valley Manor Apartments. Firefighters did rescue 2 victims off of balconies, get the fire extinguished very quickly. So I just want to publicly, acknowledge them, their hard work. We were assisted by several EMS agencies, the Flint Twp Police Department, Sheriff's Office as well. It was a great, a great effort there. Kept the fire small, got everybody out of harm's way. So everyone did a really, really good job. That's all that I have for tonight. Thank you.
Stuart, do you have a report?
And this time.
Mrs. Tucker, do you have a report?
No report today.
So we'll move on to new business. I know the agenda's, my agenda doesn't say special meeting. I don't know if anybody else does, but this is a special meeting. Yours?
No.
Action item A is to consider to initiate a 30-day notice to terminate the contract with McKenna Associates. Since I don't have any information about this, if somebody, whoever was discussing this over the weekend to initiate this, if you want to talk, go right ahead.
I'll start. So I know at our June 6th Board of Trustees meeting, we authorized a contract with this McKenna Associates for code enforcement and non-owner occupied dwellings. I think they came on board a week later, 2 or 3 days later, and there were a lot of things going on that I think didn't sit well with what people we were seeing. I think I didn't realize this company was coming on our premises. I thought they had their company somewhere and they'd be working from their premises. They're utilizing our vehicles. They're utilizing they used our postage, our envelopes, our electricity, our everything. So an 80-20 split for that does not sound like a reasonable situation. So I think a lot of things have changed. I've had a conversation personally with Mr. Worthing. I don't even need to paraphrase what he and I discussed. He can if he'd like, but I think he said he saw issues with this contract as well. The conversation was that, well, wait a minute, maybe we should pause this. I had a conversation with our attorney, Peter Goodstein, who reviewed the contract, I think, maybe worked on the contract, but he had some very serious concerns regarding the contract that I think were expressed at that particular time, yet we still move forward with it. So for those reasons, I'm still talking.
I know.
You
caught my
said out
breath.
like you were, yes, thank you. You could have started. So, for those reasons, and some of the things that Mr. Worthing and I talked about, we just think that some of this can be done in-house. We talked about some ways that they can be done, be a cost savings. If we can get that whole 100% and do the same job. We can hire these code enforcement people. We can hire some inspectors. We talked about utilizing some of the staff that we have currently. There's ways of getting around and being able to do this. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think you agreed that would be ideal if we can find the staff to make that happen.
We find the staff, but we don't have it. We don't have the money. That's the problem.
We have $20 an hour for code enforcement.
We're not talking code enforcement, we're talking rental inspections. They're not providing code enforcement right now. They're strictly doing rental inspections.
We talked about a possible solution to that.
There's options definitely, but
Right.
I don't, in my opinion, I think we need to revisit the contract possibly with them and see what our options there are to utilize that.
And then there were some personal issues that I don't want to get into as far as the contract and who's on staff that I can move on beyond that. But that conversation took place as well. So with that, that's all I have to say.
Anybody else?
Do we have any bills yet from McKenna?
I didn't hear you.
Do we have any bills from McKenna?
Not at this time.
Do we have an idea if they've done the rentals, what that would have approximately been?
They give some projections. I think Sam can probably answer that better. He's here from McKenna to answer your questions to do with that.
I can address the board if you'd like.
I think what Deb might be saying also, because would be, do we have anything in-house currently at this time for the week or so that they've been in here using our stuff, doing their thing? Is there anything that they've assessed us a fee on as of yet?
Not as of yet.
Do you know how many hours they've put in based on the $65 an hour rate that we're being assessed? Do you know how many hours we've got applied to us already?
Well, the $65 an hour rate was for code enforcement. They've done none. So the rental portion of it comes off of the rental revenue that comes in as it comes in. So they have the upfront money that they're putting up front to cover their guys that they have here working right now. We're not paying anything out as far as a salary or anything at that point. They are using our letterhead, our papers. They do pay for the vehicles. We have an agreement that's in the contract that was presented to the board, that $500 per vehicle will be reimbursed back for them using our vehicles. We discussed that. The reason we wanted them using our vehicles is because our vehicles will be lettered with Flint Township code enforcement on it, so when they're pulling into either residences or apartment complexes, people know that they are from the township, not just some person coming in there.
So our vehicles will be a tagged vehicle, and at this time we're not tagged, and they're using our vehicles?
They've used one.
Okay.
And our vehicle does say code enforcement on it, the cruise. And they've used the truck a little bit, and that's gonna be lettered up.
Are we being compensated back for the gas usage in this case?
That's part of the $500.
Part of the 500? That being a huge issue right now as far as gas is concerned.
Stuart, is that $500 per vehicle, or just per time they go out per
We started
vehicle?
with one, but if we have two, it would be per vehicle.
It says it in the contract, per vehicle.
Yep.
Right here it says per month, vehicle per work, okay.
Anybody else? Any other questions?
No, but I think we should explore it more if we could have more, that the township pays the code enforcement people to do this work, that it would still, I think, be less money for the township.
Well, code enforcement is different than rental inspection. It's a different person. It's a different qualification of person. It takes a different knowledge. So, I mean, you can't take a code person per se and just throw them into a rental inspection, because they're checking life safety issues, which once we check it, then we assume that liability. You know, if something takes place and they missed it or oversight or whatever, I mean, you assume some liability there.
I have a question. So when you came to staff meeting, it was only rental inspections? I
Yep.
spoke with our attorney, he said he saw two different contracts. It's all one question. Our attorney told us he saw two different contracts. He's not even for sure what was handed to us, if it's what he had kind of signed up on. And we received one contract that merged everything together, and that wasn't the initial plan, that all of these services would be provided. This $65 for code enforcement, our code enforcers are making $20 an hour.
Right.
We could hire 3 people to cover that kind of ground with that kind of money. It doesn't add up financially that we would do
That's
that.
why we're not doing code with them right now. We haven't entered into anything code. Right now, we're strictly rental inspections.
Why didn't we leave why did we merge these 2 contracts when our attorney said there were 2 separate ones that he reviewed?
I would have to see what Peter had. I can't answer that.
Did you guys give him 2 contracts?
He sat in a meeting with Sam, me, and Stuart, and he reviewed it for us, and then we met.
He said there were 2 contracts.
Do you recall 2 contracts? You know, I find it difficult to hear what Peter said when Peter's not here. If we want
Yeah,
to,
there was one discussion with the contract that was there that we gave Peter and went through with
we should have had
McKenna.
him come here.
I can address
Is
the
it
board on this
chemical?
topic.
No, any communication I've requested from an attorney isn't what he said. It's in writing to every board member, and I've made that request I don't know how many times. So that communication, I can't say I even believe it. I'm sorry. I've asked
Was there,
it
how
for
many,
writing.
was there 2 contracts?
I can address the board on
Well,
this
the point
topic.
is what we had,
Can
we
you come to
approved
the
this, and
podium,
nobody,
please?
nobody talked about this prior to everybody agreeing to this contract with this company at the last meeting. And in 2 weeks, I don't know what took place, but it's a lot of this.
So the
And I
question
don't like
is,
this and I don't like that, and nobody has gone to them. Am I right? Has anybody sat down with them, or the supervisor, or Stuart? Has
I did
that
sit
taken
down
I think
with
place?
Lisa sat down with Stuart.
Sat down with Stuart.
did you sit down with Stuart before or after you called this special meeting?
Before. I said we're looking at calling a special meeting. I had a conversation with him, and I shared my concerns with him.
That was yesterday morning.
Right.
Late morning.
So on Monday morning at 9:45, you told me at our personnel committee meeting, we are going to call a special, or no, you said we have the votes to give McKenna a 30-day notice. I said that would have to be done at a board meeting. Then at 5:30 on Monday night, you said we're gonna call a special meeting for Wednesday at 3:30 p.m. to give McKenna a special notice. Nobody spoke to Stewart, nobody spoke to me, we have an issue and our policy says if we have an issue that we need to solve, if there's a problem, you're supposed to go to that person. Nobody's reached out and talked to McKenna if we have an issue with the contract. I agree with Barb. June 6th, there was a unanimous vote to approve that contract. And all the items that you're talking about, maybe not using our computers, it was part of our conversation with Peter and Stewart. Nobody went to Stewart and asked, did they ask you any questions about the contract before June 6th meeting? No.
We had a different, I can't speak for anybody else in this board. I had a different interpretation about what they were going to do, how they were going to do it. Like I said, using our vehicles, our postage, and to use everything that we have, all of our resources, and then give them 80%, do the math.
I don't disagree with you,
Where do you get
Lisa.
your information? Where did all this information come in 2 weeks to you guys?
They were here. I know they ran the postage because I got one of the things and it ran on our
Okay,
postage
okay.
machine. I have evidence, all
So
the
you
evidence.
do, but how about everybody else? Where did all you guys communicate? How did this happen?
It started,
This is not an emergency.
it started-
It's an embarrassment, and it's not professional, none of it.
On the,
I think is,
Go ahead, Sam.
on the issue of the contract, there were two versions. There was only ever one contract for services. We sent Karen and Stuart an initial contract, which we then met with the township attorney about. There were several revisions that they requested. Namely, I think we had accidentally identified Karen as a township manager rather than supervisor. They wanted to add.
And we changed that.
Correct, yep. A credit for vehicles if we were going to use the township's vehicles, which, just to make clear, we do not have to do at all. It is up to the township how you would like our people to do that. They have their own vehicles. We compensate them for the use of their own vehicles when they do use their own vehicles. So we're fine either way, I guess, is how I would put it. Karen also asked that our 90-day termination clause be taken down to 30 days to provide even more flexibility for the township. And I think that was the extent of the changes. So there was only ever one contract. We just made the changes that were requested by the township.
Which was reviewed by Peter, and he's the one who advised that we asked for those changes and they were made.
Correct.
That's the contract that was presented to the board, which the board unanimously approved on the 6th. And I don't disagree with some of your observations. I didn't know that it'd be our postage or our letterhead or whatever. We should have called him and talked to him and said, hey, we're seeing this play out now. We've never been this way before. We haven't had this before. Let's sit down and talk about this, but that didn't occur. It didn't occur with until yesterday with you, after the decision. I don't know who made the decision that there was enough votes to call a special meeting to give them 30-day notice, but no one talked to Stewart, no one talked to me, no one talked to McKenna. I don't know what else to say.
Karen, I think I came to you and you almost shut me down, and so I know I'm not gonna talk.
When was that?
In that parking lot. You said.
We were
when I
passing in
asked
the
you
parking
question,
lot, and you
Carol
asked
was
me.
my witness.
Right.
Did I not ask her?
What did you ask me?
What originally, everything started with the fact that this company that come in is Stewart's son-in-law to be in 2 months. So all this whole thing about relationship, there's a board policy that you can't have these, so that's how it started.
Wait a second,
And
what's
you
our-
went to defend all of
Wait a
that.
second, what's our board policy?
That you can't supervise it and your relative.
Jake doesn't work for us. He works for McKenna.
He's on our premises. And is Stewart not watching them?
Well, did
Who's
the-
watching
Did
them?
the board have an objection when my brother had to come do an emergency service for our boiler to get past the state so the state didn't shut us down? Did anybody say anything about that?
You're not supervising them.
aware of
There's some we've got some couples that work for
Supervising
the,
McKenna.
we have some couples that work, and
I just think
so
this.
that's how it all
It's just
started.
so
So
weird.
it
You
is.
asked me
Transparency.
in
He'd like to
the.
It's a
see-
transparency
he'd like to
piece.
I want to answer this question. You asked me in the parking lot, you said, is Jake related to Stewart? You didn't ask me anything about the contract or any issues that you've presented, which are good issues. We should talk about it. I said, no, he's dating his daughter. And I said, just go talk to him, go ask him. That's what I said. There was nothing else said. I didn't shut you down. I gave you a direct answer.
Jake worked here prior to that, and no one had an issue. He was a code officer here for quite a few months. No one had an issue.
I think it
then.
was
He
6
still-
months before COVID. Nobody said a word. He was a good employee.
I would add, Jake is an excellent worker for us as well. He's a very sharp young man. He came into our hiring pool through our normal hiring process. He sent his resume just like everybody else did. We interviewed, I think we got around 50 applications. We interviewed maybe 7 or 8 people. Jake's unique mix of code enforcement experience as well as experience in the trades and building made him a perfect candidate to be a rental inspector. So that's the only reason he's working for us. We sent both him and the other part of our team, Dave, down to one of our building departments in the Metro Detroit area to work under one of our very experienced building officials and electrical inspectors who runs one of the best rental programs in the state. But of course, I'm biased, and I got excellent feedback from them as well. That the team you guys have here is a valuable asset to the community, in my opinion.
And they report directly to you?
Correct.
Did you?
And you're located where?
We're located across the state. We have offices in Detroit, Northville, Kalamazoo, and Grand Rapids.
So you can manage from across the state?
Pardon me?
You can manage these employees from across the state?
Indeed, yeah.
People had to for 2 years with COVID.
Oh, we've
People were
been
at
doing
home.
this long before COVID. The tools that have come with COVID, though, have been helpful, to be sure.
You were gonna say something? Is there any other questions for Sam?
I'm wondering if we have an idea of what the billing looks like so far.
Right, yep. So I can say we've been on the ground about 2 weeks, and in that time, we've sent out several thousand notices to property owners, and we've collected about $3,000 in revenue, which is almost half of the total rental revenue that was collected in 2015, 2016, 2019. And it is true that our operation here is going to incur some expenses like postage, but these are going to be quite negligible compared to the amount of money that the township is going to receive with no responsibility of providing the inspections. I expect the rental program to have approximately the same amount of revenue as the entire building department has within a year from now. And that means hundreds of thousands of dollars that Stuart and the building department are going to have to do their job more effectively, with not a ton amount of effort on behalf of the township. Aside from the postage, we've moved all the administrative functions into Jake and Dave's hands. They generate the letters, they stuff the envelopes, they send out the notices, they track down the rentals. The only thing that Chris in the office does is field a couple incidental phone calls when people come in, and then she directs them straight to Jake. So I think if we take a big picture look at it, the costs that the township are going to incur by our presence and our operation of the program are not only going to be relatively minor, they're going to be much more than covered by the revenue split, which once again equates to essentially free revenue for the township.
The other question I had, I know our attorney had mentioned a concern regarding if individuals don't let you into the apartments that you have to get a warrant. And how cumbersome that might be as far as getting warrants and everything, and that's kind of why we had kind of moved away from that. And I know this is all, I guess, hearsay, but it was shared with me that I think our police chief had some concern and issues with that they could get bogged down, tied up with trying to get warrants issued.
Correct, yes. So first, that does become an issue in some communities where you have obstinate tenants who say, oh no, I don't want anybody coming into my unit. So firstly, that's generally a violation of their lease. So most leases say that, you need to comply with the laws of, the state, municipality, stuff like that. So, and then on top of that, we start with a very high level of voluntary compliance. which is what makes the program function, if we're being honest. If every single landlord said to us, no way, we're not gonna do this, we're gonna sue you, it would indeed make our jobs impossible. But getting administrative warrants to go into units, in our experience, all the communities we operate in, is a relatively rare occurrence. And if it needed to become a regular thing, we would be happy to talk about a way of splitting the cost with the township. If it was, if getting those administrative warrants in the first place is even the route that the township wants to take. There are some municipalities that allow landlords, tenants and landlords to opt out of the inspection. I certainly don't recommend that being the policy, but it's one of the many avenues and ways that we could deal with issues like that when they come up.
So, can you give me an idea of how many municipalities that you guys work with doing this?
We probably provide building services to maybe 25 municipalities. Probably over half of them we operate a rental program in.
How many?
I would say probably 15 municipalities.
Do you have the same split, 80-20?
Not more or less. Generally speaking, in contracting building services, the contractor does receive the larger proportion of the revenue because we do take on most of the costs. I know paying code enforcement $20 an hour might seem like a good deal. Our people are paid a lot more than that, and to be honest, to get quality individuals, oftentimes you do have to pay them quite a bit of money. And in any enterprise, labor is always the biggest expense that's incurred usually. So we shoulder that, and we incur the most costs, so that's why the split is the way it is.
So there's a little wiggle room there between all these,
There is room to negotiate. It's very early days, but if we wanted to try to find some ways to put some numbers to these expenses, so for example, the postage, we've sent out a couple thousand notices to property owners, right? So that means 53 cents in postage, probably another nickel or so in paper and envelope. So that is about $1,100. So that's a fair amount of money. But then we need to look at the budgeting for what the program's going to generate. I expect once we get everything up and operational, we're looking at total revenue of maybe $50,000 to $60,000 a month. So that's $10,000 to $15,000 that the township is going to get, and that buys a lot of envelopes, to be sure. So. But there is certainly wiggle room. We are more than open to talking about, the various revenues and expenses that go on with the program. Our ears are open, and we have experience of doing the same thing in a lot of different communities. So we like to think we have a couple solutions in our back pocket.
I got one that popped up when you said that. You said $50,000 to $60,000 per month would be the anticipated total revenue generated. So the rental inspections that we're going to run 20 of them this month. If we hit, when do we hit that number that you've inspected all of those rentals? And then do we go every 12 months, every 36 months? What is the cycle on this? And then,
Yep.
I'm sorry, 12, 36, and if we've hit that $10,000 generated for the township per se, so we generate $120,000. Is that, and if you will, you started to, how does that relate to year 2, 3, et cetera, and the term of those inspections that occur? That's one, and then I have a follow-up, if you don't mind.
Sure. So our anticipated cycle is 2 years. So every 24 months, there would be an inspection. I'm hoping that we can get to somewhere around $40,000 to $50,000 a month in the next 2 to 3 months, and that we're able to hold that more or less steady throughout the first year. There is good reason to believe that it could go even higher than that, but that's kind of the projection I use to be conservative. So that would, every 2 years, you would have to recertify, is what the cycle is. Was there another part to the question?
Yes, just to continue on this one, does that relate, or how does that connect to what the state allows for us to do? How many times? Is there a state mandate? Is there a state question that says you can come into I have a 2-person tenement house. And so you can come in 2022, and the state says, yep, you can come in 2022. Can you come in 2023? Or does it automatically carry to 2024? What is the state guideline for allowing you, as an independent, to come into the rental homes, the rental apartments, the rental facilities? And I understand the safety and liability of the residents, that's more important than anything. But on the other side of the coin, we also have a liability to consider when you're asking to come into John Smith's place. So what would be the time, go back to it, what would be the length of time that does the state require, how much?
Yeah, so there's no particular requirement. That's largely mandated by the local municipality, decides what their cycle is. I think there was, so about 15 to 20 years ago, when these ordinances started to be enacted in the state of Michigan, there were multiple lawsuits about it. Of course, they worked their way all the way up to the Supreme Court. I think one of the guidelines that was established then is that it could be no more than annual. You could not require more than an annual inspection. Most municipalities are in 1, 2, 3 years. There are a handful of outliers that do 5 years or something like that, but most municipalities have a rental certification cycle that goes either 1, 2, or 3 years.
Did you ask both questions?
No, but go ahead, summarize. I'm trying to.
Well, this is
phrase
not necessarily a question for you, but I know it was just a comment that I still believe that we can do this internally ourselves. The $50,000-$60,000 that we can make would be great funds for our township to be able to operate all of those. We did have an individual that was doing the rental inspections. It was Bernard, what's Bernard's last name? Schumann?
Schumann, yeah.
Bernard Schumann was doing our rental inspections, and I know we released Bernard, and that wasn't done properly because it should have come before this board if he was going to be released. We hire, we let go. That didn't happen. We just recently, last month, 6 weeks ago, hired a retired police officer as code enforcement at this board. He has been let go, and none of us are even aware of it. We just found out through this whole operation that he's been sent home. Those are all a lot of alarming things, and so for me, I say we need to initiate the 30-day notice to terminate the contract with McKenna Associates, that we take a look at other ways that we can do this. We do know, like, for instance, I know we talked about Marcus is in our township. He's a retired police a firefighter. He's trained in inspection work. We might be able to, I just think we can look at other ways as to this,
Recoups.
yes.
I would say, ma'am, so those projections are us running a department, and there are many reasons why we run these departments for municipalities. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do. It requires a fair amount of experience and familiarity with it. And like I said, if the plan was to pay rental inspectors $20 an hour, I'd be scared of the person that you're going to get going into people's homes for that amount of money, honestly. I mean, it's a very challenging thing. We've all, training up the 2 people we have has already been a huge lift, to be able to get them ready for it. It's a huge challenge. So while I think going in-house is a worthwhile option that the board might want to explore in the future, that's something that requires a huge amount. I mean, we've been preparing for this project for several months, and the concerns internally that you would have would be much more than what we would have, because you have all your municipalities just have more complex hiring, HR systems in place. So it would require laying a lot of groundwork to be able to pick that up. I would say that if the board was inclined to terminate, which you can do at any time, it would be great if we could at least get the program up and running, and then the township can decide to go in-house down the line, if they so choose to do so.
I don't disagree. How many weeks are we? We're 2.5 weeks in. Not even a whole month to evaluate the performance and see how it's working. We haven't received an invoice of anything. I mean, we need to look at some costs here to make an informed decision, and we haven't done that. And we certainly haven't reached out to talk to you to see if there's any wiggle room in the contract that we unanimously approved June 6th. Does anyone else have a question for Sam right now?
I do. So in a couple weeks that you had inspected enough rentals that you had sent out 1,000 or 2,000 notices?
So the notice, so the step-by-step of the process is first, you send out notice to the landlords to say, hey, the township does have this ordinance, you are required to get inspections. So you need to apply, pay, and schedule an inspection to get begin to come into compliance. So those are, we've only done our first handful of inspections the past couple days. We only today entered our first checks, about $3,000 worth of revenue. So we've only just barely started doing inspections. What we've been doing is just notifying landlords, hey, get in touch with us, fill out an application, schedule an inspection.
So I'm a newer board member, so I would say out of ignorance, I have another question, that all municipalities, then they go out and just inspect all of the apartment rentals or rental properties if it's homes?
Correct, yes. Municipalities that have rental, non-owner occupied dwelling ordinances.
Okay.
But of course, that's contingent on them filling out an application, setting up the inspection, stuff like that. We don't knock, 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 show up and ask to be let in.
Do most people, they willingly want to get inspections?
The vast majority, yes.
The renters do.
The renters do, because I think when we approved, when the contract was approved, the fire department was talking about the importance of smoke detectors. I mean, we're going to literally make sure there are thousands of smoke detectors put in rental units, as well as thousands of fire extinguishers, which are required under the International Property Maintenance Code, but not all apartment complexes want to, ante up the money to provide those. So from a tenant's perspective, yes, come on in. You're going to tell my landlord what they need to fix in my building. So tenants are usually, you get a couple hermit types or, people who just lock the door and won't answer, stuff like that. It's really the landlords is where you tend to run into a little bit more friction, of course.
Okay, thanks.
So you said 2,000 letters went out already?
Just about, yeah.
And I'm not sure who the votes are to give him the 30-day notice. Does someone have a plan as to what's going to happen when these people call and schedule an inspection? Because I'm not sure how we're going to handle that.
I know we've gotten a lot of disgruntled people that received the notice. I do know I received a notice. I don't have any rental property, and my home is not a rental property. When I check with the assessing to make sure all of my paperwork is in order, it appears, I don't know what list you guys are working from. It didn't appear that whatever you guys are working from is a list that you received from assessing. So I don't know where you got all of these names and everything. So there's just been a lot of things that are just not right. I say we halt this at this particular time. We could always go back. We could always go back and take some time to, make sure we have our ducks in a row and what we need to do. I don't want this township to be that disrupted with this, and it'd be better to disrupt it now before it's affected so many people than to have to do it later.
Did you not tell me that you looked into her address and her address was listed as a rental on the rental inspection programs when the previous renter?
From the previous owner, I was told that they pulled the list from all previous rental certifications. Your house was one back in, I think it was 2014. That list, who was ever registered as a rental prior in Flint Township, those automatically got sent out. That's how you got one.
Paula said she gave you a list. I don't know what list you're working
That
on.
list was a PRE, the list with.
Which
with
my name is,
non-PREs.
we have a PRE on ours, so I don't know how we.
On that list, but it was pre-registered rental properties
From previously.
from previous years.
That house was never a rental. I don't know what
It
that
was
was. but-
registered in our system back in 2014 as a, so whoever the
Did you not
previous-
use the current list that Paula gave you, or no?
They're two different lists.
They
The
use
list
both.
that, go ahead, sorry.
They'll use both lists. Previous rentals and then that, but if it's like with yours, it's not a rental anymore, it gets tossed aside.
I have a
That
question.
home was never a rental, so I don't know how.
I have a question that popped up in my head. What happens if the information is ignored, per se? And I guess I'll ask you, Scott. I mean, I'm just curious. What happens if I get a letter and I'm a rentler and I own the property and I just say, I'm not, how does that, I'm curious, how does that follow through?
I'll defer to Sam,
Okay.
they handle that, their people handle that.
Yeah.
So I just wad it up and throw it in a circular file. What's up with that?
Yep. So if someone were to do that, we would send a couple more notices, give them time to come into compliance, send them applications, make sure they have all the information they need. Eventually, if someone just refused to register the rental property, we would ticket them.
How does that ticketing process work then? I guess I keep looking back to our side, because would it be us that would be responsible to pursue that, or how does that work? Okay.
That would be our responsibility.
So we ticket the renter.
No.
The rental property, sorry. And then how does that process play out?
Then the township attorney takes it to court, speaks with the defendant, just kind of the same way any other civil infraction ticket would. If they don't come into compliance and their court date comes up, a fine gets assessed, the same way any other ticket would work.
Any further questions on this end? No? Any other questions? What, Tom?
I say I'm still ready.
Any questions
ahead.
on this end?
I have comments.
Do we want to get to a motion so that we can make comments? Someone want to make a motion?
We've all been making comments. Why can't she make hers right now?
Oh, go ahead.
No. Well,
I
first of
thought
all,
Lisa
thank
moved
you. And
already.
it sounds like you're willing to work with the township to change some things. That's first. So, because there's apparently a lot of going on. I don't know how in 2 weeks, where all this, again, this conversation, who all was talking or whatever you were doing, and where you got your information. I know, Lisa, you said you were here, and that's fine. I know when I'm here, I know that too. But there's other things that are going on, and I think that actually, there's people here that have already made up their minds before they came in. And if I got a call, my call to me about this meeting was at 5:30, about a meeting that's gonna be at 3:30 today. So that was already set. So I'm just saying that. And I think we need to think about the residents and that the landlords don't give a crap about where they're living. They really don't. I don't know what we're gonna do about the actual homes instead of apartment complexes.
Yeah, I mean, based on the census statistics, half of everybody's constituents here are renters, and it's, it's difficult. Like you said, landlords can be very obstinate if they don't want to maintain properties. They don't have to, and without enforcing a non-owner occupied ordinance, it's very difficult to bring them to court in any sort of way unless you can prove severe negligence on their part. It has to really be some pretty severe situations to intervene in other ways. And this is all about making sure that the people who live in those rental properties in the township have safe, healthy built environments. I mean, life safety is the first priority, but the second priority that we have to think about is the future. And the housing stock is a huge part of any community's life. It's a matter not just of making sure that you're financially well in the future, but that you have a happy, healthy community. So when you have tons of rental, I mean, I would encourage the township to make sure that one way or another that these ordinances get enforced, because they can have a huge material impact on the lives of people in your township. Having a fire extinguisher in a kitchen can save somebody's life. So they are very important, separate and apart of how they get enforced. They're very important, and they're the only way to hold landlords accountable. They're landlords because they're making money. They're generating revenue off of the units that they have. So I don't really think it's a huge ask of people to say, hey, for $100 a year, make sure that your rental is certified, safe, happy, healthy, so.
Did you say that the half our constituents are renters?
I think it's 44% is what the census says, about half.
Now, I'd like to say, I do appreciate this meeting being called, a special meeting, because it brings out more information, and we do this for the residents. That's why we're here. So it's really no need for attitudes, because we're all intelligent individuals.
We are.
That should be able to agree, to disagree, and have a sensible conversation without the anger, I guess I could say.
Well, it is
I
when a
think
lot
that,
of stuff
excuse
goes
me,
around.
excuse me. And I think that the meeting that we had today did bring out more information and give more clarity. I think if we would have had this meeting before and had all this discussion, then it wouldn't have been, we wouldn't have had any need to have that, or this chitter chatter, whatever Barb was saying. But I think that it was much needed for this board to hear all the information that we did here, because if nothing else, we are supposed to be transparent to the residents that we serve. So I don't,
But all this
I
could have
don't
been
see-
handled at the meeting when it was approved, and
Excuse me?
nobody talked to them. Am I right?
It would have been better after our staff meeting, when we brought it up that we were gonna do this, in preparation for the meeting June 6th, that people would have gone and asked questions, whether it was of Stuart, of me, of Peter, of Sam. I'm embarrassed that we signed a contract with you, gave you 2.5 weeks, and it looks like people have already decided that they're gonna give you a 30-day notice. I think it's completely unprofessional. Just my opinion. I don't disagree with you as far as transparency and doing our due diligence, but the timing's bad. Should have been done before we signed the contract.
There's a lot of things that should have been done, like we should have gotten RFPs and gotten some other quotes from some other companies and all of that. And we've just, I think we've been a little lax as a board. I know I probably have been lax as a board member to not require those kinds of things, but we haven't looked any other place. Like I said, I talked to the attorney, and I was even more convinced that
especially if people was getting let go and we weren't aware of it and stuff
just a
like
lot
that.
of
It was
stuff
just some
going on.
different things
It's-
that came, that brought this to about here. It's not just one
That issue
situation.
has nothing to do with McKenna and what we're
not
discussing right
personal,
now.
Barb.
I'm not saying that it do,
not personal.
but the reason why there was question about this whole situation was how things were handled. Different people, if there's someone, you said we were responsible for people coming and going, correct?
Yes.
Okay then. We didn't know anything about somebody leaving.
Well, I was in California when you hired Zaya. I mean, we're gonna have a standard that everybody meets on this board, and apparently we don't.
Agreed. I agree upon it, and I'm not
Call
trying
for
to
the
play tit
question.
for tat.
Does
with you
someone
on
wanna
that.
make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we initiate a 30-day notice to terminate the contract with McKenna Associates until we have some time to work this out as a township and under the board.
I'll second it.
Is there any further discussion? No further discussion? You can call the roll. I already know what the answer is because I was told Monday this
You
wasn't
never
gonna
did.
happen. Go ahead.
You sure?
Yeah,
I
call
mean,
the
you already
roll.
know the answer though.
We do. Go ahead.
Let's see how it goes. Trustee Campbell? Trustee Flea?
Yes.
Clerk Triplett, yes. Supervisor Miller? No. Treasurer Anderson?
Yes.
Trustee Fabdal?
Yes.
And Trustee Burt?
No,
With no further business and without objection, we'll call the meeting adjourned.
Look at you. You're at the top of your game. At work or at play, you're unstoppable. Nothing can throw you off track. Oh, hey. She's cute. Nice going, man. Things are going great for you. You've earned a night out. Good drinks, good friends. Yeah, we can go ahead and call this a good night. Wait, is that your car? Uh-oh. Not smart. Yeah, I saw that coming. Say goodbye to her. Ouch, that'll hurt your bank account. You're looking at around 10 grand in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. I hope you like eating frozen dinners. Alone. Let's try this again. Smart move. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.